Hello and welcome back to what was the name of our Serious IR podcast? I've forgotten already.
Jesus Christ! What?
I hate the little button on the back of my head that I push every time we're done recording.
Every time.
Yeah. Well, welcome to whatever that podcast was.
It was
We're
like
all
narratives and
were.
narratives and refuse.
It's gone.
I don't know.
It's gone like so many leaves in the wind.
Yeah. Like piss down the fucking dunny. It's gone.
I have been spending a lot of time. I've been spending a lot of time sending Alice the titles of different like IR essays.
I don't know if you had done this bit before, but when you listen to those serious ones, it always goes things like, "Hello and welcome to the world this evening.
The world this evening is a really good fucking name for it, to be honest."
It's like economist ass name, and you're kind of like, in this podcast, we speak to fascinating people about my brain is just not there, but because it's like one of those things that you really have to script. But crucially,
hello, and you're listening to Views from Your Window.
The Sickos podcast.
There's always this like fascinating people looking at global events that can be very overwhelming, but will shape our lives and our futures.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
they're looking
stuff.
at those events through a lens too, which is how you know that you're really serious.
That's right.
So in this case, I remember what it was. It was Refuse of the Future, Challenges in Geopolitics from Metternich to the 22nd century.
There we go. Do you want to start again with hello and welcome to?
Yes, I will do that. Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Rescue... Fuck! That's fine. Let's just leave it.
Oh my god, dude.
No, I have to
leave all of that in.
Look, okay. Serious IR podcast. We are now my fellow serious scholars of international relations. We have been presented with a new development, a sui generis development in the development of the international sphere.
Yeah, a dangerous escalation has happened in a multipolar sense.
We are forced now to ask if reading a poem by Bono is considered in Russian tactical doctrine to be a nuclear strike.
Well, of course, Riley, this is thoroughly out of the ordinary for the Irish government, who are generally neutral on all military matters and previously have only deployed Bono in a UN peacekeeping capacity.
So Bono has written a poem that was read by Nancy Pelosi, which essentially is, that's like putting...
For what reason?
It's like just being like a poem by Bono. Well, it can't get more annoying than this. How is the sentence going to end?
I love that one of the most powerful people in the most powerful country in the world is like your weird art teacher who has like brought in a poem from home that she thinks is really going to inspire us in these difficult times.
My son Bono wrote this.
Yeah. Nancy Pelosi wearing a pair of dungarees. My mononymed son wrote this poem, and I think it'll really inspire you in your GCSEs.
I mean, given that she's reading poetry while presumably like barred out on a secret rich people version of Xanax, she is getting dangerously close to being like Soulja Boy.
Well, if she did crank that Soulja Boy, I would respect Nancy Pelosi a lot more.
Now it's crank that Peacekeeper Boy.
I would like to honor the people of Ukraine by saying you.
So
that would be
and apparently yes, it has been
Soulja Boy has been badly affected by the no-fly zone.
It has been because he's too fly.
Yeah, that was the joke I was going for, but it helps when you explain the punchline for me after I make it.
That's right. That's the sauce.
This isn't an ableist podcast. We're explaining jokes for people who are too stupid to understand them.
The poem, of course, has been beamed into the Russian nuclear fleet, and they no longer have a second strike capability.
That's right.
I want to talk about a few things. We have got a startup today, but there are a couple of items I want to talk about first. Number one. You thought supply chains were returning to normal.
Yeah.
They are not.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Not my supply chains.
No.
How will I get my Bono poems?
We've already done this. We had the fucking supply chain crisis. Yeah. We called it correctly like we do everything else, and then it was supposed to be done. We're just finished with it. You can't bring shit back in.
No. I'm afraid the main villain from the second half of Season 3, which was supply chains, is now combining with Season 5.
Yeah, the writers of the show are on strike.
Yeah,
so we
we're
have to
like-
bring back like B-roll footage that can't be used and repurposing them.
We're like
in different ways.
24. We're having to bring back old villains because we're running out of ideas.
So the reason that the supply chains are going to be turbo fucked again is that China is entering into a series of COVID lockdowns. So like Foxconn has shut down production in its Shenzhen factory.
Have they tried doing nothing like we're doing?
Well, you know what? We've tried
Have
doing
they tried
nothing.
having a vaccine that works? That's what's funny about the whole like the zero COVID policy in China thing, and people are being like, you get like annoying people online who are like, see, this is what China does when there are 3 cases of COVID in a city, and it's like, yeah, because their fucking vaccine doesn't fucking work. This isn't showing how good China is. This is like them covering for the massive fuck up they made by developing a vaccine that doesn't work.
I'm definitely in like the lib camp on this. I'm like, I love this shit. I love punitive lockdowns at any cost, anytime anyone has a cough. I am that person that both of you are furious at, because I will fully be like, oh, someone across town feels a bit ill. It is now illegal to go outside.
Yeah, Alice is like, I've trained for
Yes,
this. You were going on dates with girls. I was studying the agoraphobia.
That's right. That's right. I was studying 1980s German firearms.
Yeah. But yeah, like everyone I've spoken to who's living in China is like, dude, it's so fucking annoying living here right now. Like everyone else in the world is just being able to do things and go to places and generally have a life.
I hope you didn't want to buy anything because like a car, for example.
Already got one, baby.
Oh, right. The worst one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the worst BMW, the most evil car company.
Yeah,
No,
buy an exhaust for that car.
No, I think Volkswagen is the most evil car company.
That's true. No, there are another couple
The
of things.
car invented by Hitler.
Another couple of things. NFTs, wouldn't you be surprised about this? A recent analysis of the whole NFT market has shown that monthly buyers dipped below 800,000 for the first time since its peak.
Oh, damn.
The average NFT price has fallen by almost 2/3.
Oh, no, but how? Because they're so naturally valuable, because they're like the pictures of monkeys.
So now's the time, if you want to buy an ape, going begging.
Buy the dip.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. So the entire market cap, in fact, of the NFTs has, like, overall, has been, like, worse than cut in half. Unfortunately, it's still $10 billion.
Great.
Awesome.
But also, like, this article, which is published on 10, also shows that if you look at Google Trends, global keyword searches for NFTs are down by 70%.
It was a fad.
No.
It was a fad. It was always a fad. It was like
Of course it was a fad.
a pet rock, except dumber and like
Much more expensive.
exactly.
But what effect is that going to have on racism? Because when people stopped Googling the N-word, that was a good thing. So when
Yeah,
people
that's
stopped
right.
Googling NFTs, what does that mean?
Well, I think what it's going to mean is that we're going to lose a lot of dope swagness.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Are they still Googling Frank Sinatra? Because that's another important vector.
That's a callback from years ago.
Yeah,
All right,
that's some season 1 shit, baby.
we're talking a startup here. We haven't done a startup in so long because we've been caught up with talking about like stuff going on. I'm tired of it. We're going to talk about some stuff going on later on in the episode, but first...
So many of our startups lately have been like Web 3.0 bullshit that's very difficult to follow, and Web 3.0 has also just imploded. So...
Yeah, that's right. The metaverse as... seems to have been like every like metaverse projects are crashing left and right. Web3 seems to be more rug pulls than actual like projects at this point. Very amusing.
But I keep getting tweets from like very real people telling me cool project with like some weird coin or like synthetic character on it. So
what's really
Web3 was
funny?
fine.
What's really funny about the metaverse, right, is that like it was a bubble driven primarily by people who didn't ever actually see it. And at some point they had to, but all of these people would like read blogs or read the Wall Street Journal or whatever, and then eventually at some point they had to put them in a room with some poor fucker from Meta who was like, oh, here is the metaverse, and everyone realized at once that it has PS1 graphics and all you can do is peel potatoes.
Like from what I see, because I wrote like something for The Guardian this week in the tech newsletter about this, and it was like this very sort of like critical, well, like a kind of moderately critical, because I didn't really have that many words, but like it was a moderately critical article about like the idea
They
of
had to add all of those words about transphobia.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, of all the creative, yeah.
Had to add like 3 or 4 paragraphs about women and girls.
Metaverse is a women's space.
Yeah, I had to like submit them just to kind of get through the first edit. Anyway, look, yeah, like so I published this thing and like it was about the creator economy, and it was basically just the idea of saying, but look, the creator economy is just another way of getting more people to do gig work, right? And if like anyone who does creative work or like is a creator on a platform, like that's fairly obvious. I then was like inundated with emails and LinkedIn requests from like various VC funds who are like doing quote Web3 projects to be like, hey, would you like to go for like a coffee at this private club to talk about like the benefits of Web3, right? And they
always always find out.
So yeah, just bring your theater mask and cloak. No, because they would never do that. They wouldn't have a theater mask and cloak party. But like what was really interesting, or what I kind of like observed, is the fact that okay, all these people work in marketing, like, and like so much of like the Web3 phenomenon is this idea that like in a kind of like an economy that's like abundant with content, marketing people have to like jump in on stuff really, really fast. So actually like it's, you know, where you sort of have this like untangible idea that like no one really quite knows how to describe. You then got like marketing people who are very, very like quick to jump in on this stuff and tell you that this is the future. And I just sort of wonder whether how that sort of affected like, you know, the kind of like faith in Web3, like just the idea that there hasn't been enough kind of real people to like believe in this or even want this to happen. And that's like another question.
That it was just like aggressively marketed to people by marketing
people who have to keep churning out content.
Mm-hmm. Well, the marketing will continue until the apes are all widely adopted by everyone. But no, this is a normal startup, nothing to do with Web3. It's just really fucking stupid.
Does it make a product?
Sort of, yes.
Is that product going on the computer?
Yes.
Okay, so we're back to sort of like season 2, 3, 4 kind of startup territory.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make a thing that you can have in your house, but it does make a thing.
It's called Deepwell.
Does it make a deep well in your house?
You two can frack under your house.
Yeah.
No, it's less useful than that. Deepwell Digital Therapeutics, specifically, is what it's
called.
called.
Therapeutics.
Deepwell, I'll even go one further. I'll give you the first line of the copy. Deepwell unlocks the potential of blank to deliver widespread access to powerful mental health treatments at scale. What is something that would be really silly
Gaming.
to unlock the power of? Yes, correct.
What?
Oh, fuck, no.
on God, on a stack of Qurans. I did not read the notes for this. How the fuck did I get that right? Why? What? What?
Oh, I always keep the startups in a different Google Doc from the one that we ever read. Alice, all you ever see is the word startup when we review the notes.
Yes, and just off the dome, gaming. The power of gaming.
Yeah, you're too good at this.
Okay, I want to like find out some more about this because I think that like the idea of using like video games and mental, like it's not like an uncommon. I've seen there are things that like it's not like an unserious proposition to kind of think that like video games can be useful for mental health interventions.
Sure.
However, I have a feeling that this is an incredibly stupid approach to it.
Yeah, they're putting mental health in Fortnite.
Right. You
Prince Harry is coming to Fortnite to check in on you.
It's a new kind of like plugin for Tekken, where like instead of inflicting just physical health, you could also there's an extra bar where it's like mental
show
health
them
as well.
posts on an iPad and it inflicts mental damage.
Yeah, again, I'm using my special power in Tekken, which is reminding someone about their father.
Right. No, so here's the thing, right? Hussein, you are right. Like I think there is like a case to be made that like you should be creative with the way that you reach people with mental health.
There's a non-stupid way to do this. I get the sense that you have not found a non-stupid way to do this here.
Well, it's a little more sort of further on than that. It's the they haven't actually made any games yet. They certainly they have a call out to developers that if you've made a game, to submit it to them and they'll put mental health in it.
Oh, okay.
Great. So it is like a plugin.
Yeah, it sort of is like a plugin.
I want to see him put mental health into some pre-existing games. I want mental health Call of Duty 4.
We're gonna
Listen,
mod.
soap. How are you doing today? Like, seriously, because it's honestly, some of the missions we've been doing are quite high stress.
It's Call of Duty with Prince Harry as like your main quest giver.
There's a bloke here. He's going to check in on us.
So,
all right, chaps.
So essentially, right? They say that they say, okay, sorry. It takes 1 whole minute before Wilson, one of the co-CEOs, this is an interview in Engadget, drops
the
phrase
beach ball
digital
from Castaway.
We're not together, but we co-CEO.
It takes 1 whole minute before Wilson drops the phrase, quote, digital psychedelics into the conversation.
Oh, boy.
This is his kind of thing. He's an evangelist for psychedelics with endless stories about Burning Man and the personal therapeutics he's reaped from the trip.
One of those guys. Okay.
Psychedelic therapy was a starting point for Wilson and Douglas, and they're looking to mimic the perspective-shifting calming effects of those substances through accessible digital experiences. They're focused on alleviating a mental health crisis that was exacerbated by the global quarantine.
So instead of putting Prince Harry in Call of Duty, they're going to put ayahuasca in Call of Duty.
You know what this is? Remember, like, there was those like YouTube videos that would like, this YouTube video will get you high because it plays at a certain frequency or whatever. It's this.
It's binaural beats.
Incredible.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. While it may not be powerful as sitting with a macro dose of mushrooms and a couple of therapists. I love that, just 2 dueling therapists.
That's right. They're going back to back in the mix. You're doing mushrooms, the 2 therapists. One's asking about your dad, the other one's asking about your mom.
It might not be good for. It might not be 1 session, 2 sessions, or 3, but is an adjunct therapy that's good for you. Literally every game is up for review from the DTX crew, from platformers to narrative adventures to RPGs and shooters. And so the first games are due to start rolling out in 2023. Now, what really caught me about this, right, is how they position their product. So they say, this is from their marketing copy. Play goes beyond entertainment. It is the power to transform our lives, and it starts with an epic game like yours.
Why can't anything just be entertainment anymore? Like, it's doing more for my mental health when everything is shit to just entertain myself. Why does it have to check in on me as well? This is the thing I'm doing to avoid being checked in on.
A version of
fucking
Elden
leave
Ring.
Me alone. Fuck off.
A version of Elden Ring where it says, don't worry if you didn't beat this boss for the 30th time.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
no, I want to immerse myself.
Like, the real monster are the ones inside of us.
Deepwell takes your already compelling game and harnesses the neurological hooks that make it engaging to deliver therapeutic treatment. Let your game lead the way to a healthier future. So this is from VentureBeat, a tech news site, and that's really funny. I checked the press release that they sent out. The article in VentureBeat, boy, does it have a lot of similar words to the press release.
Interesting.
Conceived in the COVID-19 pandemic, Deepwell's DTX-enabled games represent a new tool to confront the widespread crisis, and this is where I wanted to pull it out, that continues to threaten healthcare systems around the world. That's right.
Instead of like therapy, we have prescribed you gaming.
Instead of therapy, we have prescribed
We've accidentally made you much worse. Yeah. You're gonna. We've prescribed you becoming a kind of esoteric fascist. No one remembers anymore. You used to be depressed, but now you can be a phalangist.
We've rebranded it as Hearts of Gold I might be a Nazi, but I really care about how you're doing.
So we
failed to take Stalingrad. That must be so hard.
There's a thing about Evan Romulus who checked in on his blogs very often.
Check in on your unit.
So everyone hold on for this sentence that's going to annoy the piss out of you.
Okay, braced.
That goes for listeners as well. As disparities in access to quality healthcare have persisted and worsened during the course of the pandemic, so too have forecasts for the future. The United States Department of Health and Human Services predicts that by 2030, mental health will become a leading medical concern. And again, they're saying, so play a game about it.
Yeah,
basically.
But not in a way that you enjoy already, which would be the reason why you would play it. No, instead, make it sort of more onerous and medicalized and tick some boxes to say that you're feeling fine in a way that, like, is capital M, capital H mental health, as opposed to things that might relate to how you're actually feeling.
Yeah, cool. Now in those online shooter games, as well as there being a place in the squad for a medic, there'll be a place in the squad for a therapist. So if any of your players are feeling down, they just come around and
TF2, meet the therapist. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we just take a deep breath? Remember
right.
that stress helps us cope with situations.
It's
this.
like you have, if you hit triangle, you switch your gun, you switch it again, and you hit it a third time, and you switch to CBT, which improves your overall resilience.
Cock and ball torture.
Deepwell is bringing entertainment and medical science together to build on the proven fact that video games can be good for you. I think this is the product of someone trying to stick it to their mother.
Yeah, maybe. It's grim though. I really don't like this one.
What I also love about it is that there's no substance to it whatsoever. At no point do they explain how they can make a video game that's good for your mental health.
They do. It's just more like, wasn't that funny?
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. It's about like, it's like how to get a message to someone. It's the same thing as like telemedicine, but it's less interactive.
Right.
Getting teabagged by your new therapist.
Yeah, that's right. My new therapist
Call of Duty, but like the death loading screen is just like, hey, why not take a minute and make yourself a green tea?
Ooh, caffeinated. But also like
Dwight D. Eisenhower.
To think about like that this is happening also while the U.S. has just decided, yeah, we're just not going to do COVID anymore at all. We've like they literally, it's not. This isn't just like people deciding to remove restrictions. The Congress forgot to fund vaccines or treatments.
Yeah, because they had to listen
COVID.
to that poem, and it really affected them emotionally.
Yeah, so like that's just kind of it, right? The people in charge of the COVID response in the country are just like, yeah, sorry, they didn't fund us anymore, so we can't buy any of like the monoclonal antibody treatments. We can't like buy more vaccines.
That's cool.
They're just gonna be not only are they not vaccinating the developing world, they're also not vaccinating most of America.
And that's equality, baby. They believe in it.
I guess so. But hey, don't worry about it. We're gonna have like a video game that like treats COVID at some point.
Yeah. It'll be really the video games that will be very good at managing collective ADHD.
Yeah, you can see Dr. Mario.
And of course, by the way,
it gives you ADHD at the same time that it helps treat it. Like cancels itself out.
A nice neutral game. Of course, all of this spending is being cut for like getting COVID vaccines to uninsured people. So now COVID vaccines in the U.S. are just going to be very expensive, unless like something is done to patch this hole. Which I don't know if there will be. Maybe they will decide, oh, wait a minute, COVID is kind of still happening. We should probably get vaccines and treatments to people that we just failed to do. But also, probably they also won't.
I mean, also just like
different things in the news now.
Just to also bear in mind, but like COVID, I think like in America, there was a clip that was sort of going around of Ron DeSantis, who like yelling at kids like who were wearing masks, right? Kind of just saying, but this is COVID theater, and like you don't need to do this anymore. COVID's over. Like, why are you virtue signaling, etc. Like, basically these extremely online these terms. And I think that like in Florida and in Texas, and I think in Arizona as well, what's been very interesting is that like COVID hasn't quite disappeared, but it's become like a fully immersed culture war issue. And so like even if there was kind of like a reconcerted plan to like manage COVID, or at least to kind of like provide vaccines again, I imagine that it would be shut down because crucially, like it's no longer really like a public health crisis with a culture war kind of attachment. It is very much like a culture war issue with like a public health attachment, maybe.
It's very funny that the governor of the state like went into a school probably to do some bullshit PR appearance, like read them a book while 9/11/3 is happening or whatever, but instead just like ends up being like, you kids are fucking cucks. You're all virtue signaling.
Yeah, he uses the term, and I was just like, wow, like the real pandemic is Poster's brain infecting everyone.
This is like bipartisan, because now you have Putin talking about how Russia is being cancelled and how everybody who doesn't like the war wants gender freedoms. So
no, it was both. It was like you can go and live in Miami or Italy and live in your villa and have your foie gras and gender freedom.
Meanwhile, the governor of the state that Miami is in is like talking the exact same way. So it's perfect.
I can't believe that Rod Liddell is writing speeches for Vladimir Putin now. It's crazy. Enough of these gender Marxists.
Right.
It really is a triumph of the Spectator writer. At long last, living Marxism has triumphed without ever doing any Marxism.
They are like the most successful political magazine.
Yes, it's like if we went off the air, all went and became sleeper agents in the state, and then like 20 years later, the largest news source in Britain was like gettingyourdicksucked.com.
Yeah,
that's right.
the prime minister was a Swedish Italian man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We wouldn't affect anything different materially, but all of our little fucking like jokes and goofs would be in there.
Are you suggesting also that whenever this state that we sort of seize control of more or less, our greatest enemy would also be speaking the same language and have the same concerns?
Yes,
awesome,
absolutely.
Perfect. So I want to talk a little bit about one more item before we talk about events, which is I don't know if anyone remembers. If you recall that some years ago there was a politician called Jeremy Corbyn, and he was sort of dogged by what were sort of mostly spurious accusations of anti-Semitism throughout most of his career. Well, it turned out, wouldn't you know this, that one of his top aides, Laura Murray, who was spuriously accused of personally being an anti-Semite by Ian Austin, who was elevated to a peerage for his efforts in fighting anti-Semitism in the Labour Party by the Tory Party, that an article he wrote in the Telegraph calling her an anti-Semite baselessly turned out to be the subject of legal action that she took on the basis that it was baseless to call her an anti-Semite. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't you know that she won like £40,000 out of it?
And extracted an apology from Lord Austin, both in the form of the Telegraph's corrections, but also a personal tweet. Now, what she didn't do, what her legal team didn't do, was to say, you have to put please retweet in there, which means she had worse lawyers than Jeremy Corbyn did. And what she also...
Ben Bradley's got copyright on that, actually.
And what she also, her legal team also didn't do was say, you have to keep the replies on. But what happened was... Ian Austin turned the replies off on his tweet apologizing to her, but not before one single glorious soldier of the left got in under the fucking wire and simply replied to him with owned. Perfect. Greatest use of Twitter.
But like, if you think about this, right, this is going to cause nobody to reassess the situation. No. None of the principled campaigners. And the judgment found, right, that she was working hard in. It has been legally admitted in the British court system that Laura Murray was working tirelessly to fight any anti-Semitism that was in the Labour Party.
Like, as we know, like this isn't like the courts aren't where these things are, if you'll excuse the choice of words, litigated. They're litigated in the Telegraph, and so like having to do a correction that nobody but us is going to remember or notice is like a relatively small price to pay. Paying exorbitant amounts of damages is a relatively small price to pay because the damage has very much been done, and I think it is like clearly by this point it's not possible to repair it. Like the smear worked, and it continues to. So all we can do on the left is just remember that this happened and occasionally dip in and be like, owned.
Yeah, or like this, like this you. That's the only thing we can do. We can only this you people.
I think the reason I want to talk about this is obviously not because I want to talk, as you say, right? Not to imagine that like, this will surely be a corrective, or to point out the hypocrisy of the principled campaigners against racism who haven't taken someone who, again, has been legally found to be a principled campaigner against racism into their ranks and all this stuff, but rather just to underscore that the most important, in relation to all of these things that are going on, nobody else is going to remember it because everybody in Britain has a dog brain.
Yes.
So you must remember. You're going to want to forget, but do not, under any circumstances, allow yourself to forget.
I mean, there's also just like, and me and Nate sort of talked about was with the Trojan horse stuff as well, where a lot of this stuff is also kind of very tied into careerism, and is tied into like the very small circles of like media and politics in this country and in London. So even when things turn out to be remarkably wrong, and like I would encourage like listeners to like really read that correction. Because, like, in simple terms, it was very much just like every accusation that was made against Laura Murray was found to be entirely incorrect, and that there was evidence to support there was evidence to the contrary. But like none of this is going to matter. Like, it's not to say that like none of this is going to matter, because maybe like long time in the future it will. But it's to say that like in this current moment, even when these types of like even when these like obvious mistakes are I don't really want to call them mistakes, but like even when these kind of like obvious fake accusations are revealed, or when like misdemeanors are exposed, or in the case of like Trojan Horse, where like an entire like structural bureaucracy is sort of shown to be actively discriminating against people. There are too many people who are like invested in the logics of that, and like their careers are very much embedded into that for like any type of self-reflection or institutional reflection to even be entertained as a concept. Which is to say that like the kind of like the I don't necessarily want to say fantasy, because like that sort of dismisses all of it, but like the scale at which anti-Semitism in the Labour Party was presented and was utilized during the election, there were so many people involved and still involved in that for like various other grievances that have nothing to do with anti-Semitism, that like this, I don't know. I mean, I'll sort of leave it there, because like I think people know what I mean, but yeah.
I don't want to spend too long on this either, right? Because there's little you can do other than just remember and just don't pretend that, this organization cares about you. I mean, obviously they don't, or whatever. But, congratulations to Laura Murray, a small sliver of good news.
Yeah, financially at least.
Yeah.
Here at Trashfuture Farms, we remember stuff.
That's right.
We don't really do anything else with it. We just remember it.
We're little custodians of memory here.
Anthony Costa from Blue, remember him?
Absolutely. Remember the members of JLS? We're pretty sure we could name at least one of them.
Yeah.
I couldn't, because I'm not from here. So I wanted to sort of transition into events.
No, Riley, you only remember Canadian things, so it would have to be like, remember Jean Chrétien?
I do.
Yeah.
I do remember Jean Chrétien. I remember the Shawinigan Handshake there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's when he pushed a guy's face away. He was trying to, fuck with him. And he says, hey, I gave him the Shawinigan Handshake.
Yeah, he was in the gay saunas, this guy. I was very sleepy, and
listeners, look up a picture
of this guy away.
Look up a picture of the Shawinigan Handshake.
I'm amazed that you didn't name
funny.
your Canadian politics podcast the Shawinigan Handshake, to be honest.
Well, now it's too late, isn't it?
Yeah. The Shawinigan Handshake is when you get jacked off in the gay sauna.
That's right.
I don't think it is. I don't think Jean Chrétien jacked that guy off.
That's a different small Canadian
He's a
town.
practitioner of Suck-Macaw.
It's the Fort Mac Handshake.
Yeah, I want to talk about this, right? Because this is, in other news of,
My hands are registered as erotic weapon.
In other news of things are happening that have happened before, I'm going to cast once more back to Corbyn, and then we're going to bring it back to the present day, which is that when he accused the Tories of being, awash in, money linked to various kinds of criminal Russian oligarchs, the response, of course, was, should Corbyn resign for this remark?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now, right, once again, the when Starmer said, going cap in hand from dictator to dictator is not an energy strategy. Once again, the same thing is being deployed against him, saying that's a very distasteful thing to say as we go see like all of our friends in Gulf monarchies, asking them very nicely to increase oil production.
Yeah, please do not point this out when we're currently, trying to do the embarrassing thing.
Yeah, that's
Stop
right.
it.
There's nothing wrong with a good beheading.
I mean,
it's
Keir
cultural.
Starmer has committed one of the great he's miscalculated once again, because what he doesn't understand is that if there is one thing that British people will fight for, it's not really for like the future of the country, it's not really for their children, it's not for institutions, but it is in fact their cars. And Keir Starmer is threatening the country with not being able to use their big cars.
Yeah. Range Rover Mum is ready to drive into this other car.
If Keir Starmer ever shows up in Dartford, oh boy,
he's in big trouble.
The people's militia will be there.
He's not welcome on the Elizabeth II bridge. Right. He's Keir Starmer banned from blue water.
Can I tell you something very funny though? right?
I don't know if it's going to live
British-
up to the Shawinigan Handshake, to be honest.
British listeners might know this, but American listeners might not. Is that Johnson failed to secure commitments from the Saudis to step up oil production.
I fucking love Saudi foreign policy.
He refused to convert to. He was like, I appreciate you, but like, I am a Shia Muslim, and I'm going to stay a Shia Muslim.
Yeah. Well, he's a Turk at his
absolutely.
His
he lusts in his heart for Vienna.
So no, but how fucking cucked are like U.S. and UK?
How good are the Saudis?
The one thing that all of these sort of massive foreign policy concessions, all of the just dumping money in there, basically building the country such that it would be run by like people who, so long as they were friendly to us, could do whatever the fuck they want.
Mm-hmm.
Like all supporting every fucked up thing they do, like getting into like
doing a naval blockade to enable their pet genocide as a favor, writing them off, like hacking a Washington Post columnist apart with saws, favor after favor after favor, and then we try and call one in back, and they're just like
fuck off.
Listen, Jamal Khashoggi walked backwards out of the Saudi embassy in perfect health. How he then afterwards ended up in a suitcase is beyond anyone's explanation.
I respect the Saudis here so much because it takes so much fucking chutzpah to play us like a fiddle for this long, right? To just get like every single possible concession out of us, and then when we really are over a barrel of oil, we're just like, no.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Fuck off.
Won't be doing that. Yeah, fuck off. Oh, awesome. Perfect. Yeah, just like it's sort of like we were talking about this earlier, right? Like Oh, by the way, just before we go on, you know what the UAE is doing with its energy industries? It's privatizing them. Like, not just its energy industries, but also its like power generation capacity and its water production.
Okay,
it's privatizing them for some reason.
That's like borderline suicidal. Like the Saudi thing here is, I think, quite canny, if obscenely trolling. Fuck, that's more like Jesus, that's like reading too much von Mises and like dynamiting your own economy.
It's like they took a like they have taken a essentially like this just
Britain pilled.
Yeah,
they've taken an investor in
Argentina pilled.
They've turned themselves from like a kind of just money generating machine, oil exporting country, all of this. They're turning themselves into Britain or like Colonia Dignidad with some like free market experiment.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, how are we gonna...
Couldn't have happened to a nicer country.
Yeah. Wait, how are we going to be able to afford our white belts? The Saudi Air Force is going to have much whiter, broader belts.
Oh, you hate to see that. They're going to have so many more dates and baklava in the cockpits of their F-22s or whatever. I think every American president gets to have one insane war against a small country.
Sure.
I think Biden should be against Saudi Arabia. We bring Iran back into the fold,
which we are sort of doing, it seems.
We team up and we get the Saudis.
I don't know if the U.S. military is capable of defeating the Royal Saudi Air Force. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of Dior belts, you know.
Yeah, those guys with their 2008 era shutter shade visors. It's great. Just like get in. It's just like it's. For some reason, they've welded a Bugatti badge onto the front of the plane so it falls apart when it's flying. It's somehow worse than the F-35.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, this has led us to some strange bedfellows, right? Because now we need oil, and we need oil. I say we, I mean the US, the UK, Europe, whatever. I know that's perhaps fallacious to say we, but I'm using a shorthand. Fuck off, don't at me. So like we need oil badly, and therefore we're going to anyone who has it. And this has led us back to Nicolas Maduro, who is the legitimate president of Venezuela once again.
Crazy how that happened. I mean, good luck for the Silver Corp guys.
Yeah, that's real awkward.
Yeah.
The trouble is, we don't need silver.
Yeah, right. No. They're just gonna. The Silver Corp guys, they can just fly to Donbass. I'm sure they'll be treated very well. So I guess Juan Guaido is now out of a job overnight. as
I almost feel bad for him.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm lying. I don't feel bad for him at all.
Right, but also like Iran and the UK, like this intractable sort of prisoner swap situation seems to have become much more tractable. We found a way to pay them the 400 million pounds we owed them. For those tanks.
Ian Austin's account.
What's really funny, right, is that the debt that this is about, right, is we had contracted, Britain had, with the Shah of Iran to deliver like some amount of tanks. Then the Islamic Revolution happened. And we decided that the deal was off, and the Iranians still wanted compensation for this. And so we've paid them something like 400 million quid. I think there was an easier way out of this, and I'm remembering my contracts tutorials, and I think the answer is we simply send them a shitload of 1979 vintage tanks.
Yeah, send them some chieftain tanks.
Yeah, what are you complaining about? We have fulfilled every like contractual obligation.
A tank where like everything inside it is made out of asbestos.
Yeah, this is what we're essentially doing is trying to repair. There's just this this whole, the fact of this whole geopolitical alignment, this realignment that's taking place, right? All of these axes of sort of alliance and enmity, and some I'm not saying that it'd be ludicrous to overstate the case and say we're now aligned with Iran, which is still like talking to Russia and everything.
No,
but
we're Shia
but it is like
in this country.
I think it speaks to like how weird and how unexpected Putin invading Ukraine was, that it's thrown everything out of whack to the extent that we don't really know where anything's going to land yet, and it has led us to these strange places. And like sometimes history has a way of doing this. You remember the like week where Donald Trump almost reunified Korea until he got mad at fucking Robert De Niro and then got bored and left?
Oh
yeah,
man.
Awesome, love that. But I took a very tough
one of my
line
favorite
with
things she's ever
done. I said, Britain now recognizes the fourth caliph, and you're just going to have to accept that.
That's why he didn't turn on the oil, because he's too Shia. No, but like all of these, if you recall, for sort of every journalist and think tanker, fucking from Thomas Friedman to the American Enterprise Institute to the Henry Jackson Society, all of these organizations have, for as long as we can remember, right, they have been pushing the line that the foreign policy decisions made by the US, UK, et cetera, are made on a straightforwardly moral basis. The big geopolitics switch has been turned to off since 1990.
Yes, yeah. Like there was a brief sort of like pause in this when we had neocons, like who were like, actually, no, this is good. We should take and exercise power in order to like have a new American century. But then that was very carefully like hushed back up again, and so you just had this whole sort of like media industry all crowding around with their backs to the big switch that says geopolitics, and being like, yeah, it says off. Actually, you can't look at it.
That's right.
But like, trust me, it does say off. There is no geopolitics anymore. Everything that happens is a straightforward moral test, and we certainly aren't doing anything that you could describe as like realpolitik or like anything like that.
The geopolitics button is in Boris Johnson's office, right next to the Stop Brexit button and the racism button, where all the letters have been worn off.
Yeah, every leader of every country has all of these buttons and switches in their office, like a big like railway signal box.
Yeah,
and they spend they spend all day like shifting levers up and down and turning hand cranks.
There's
and
the
pushing
Shawinigan
buttons.
Handshake button, where if you press it and a robotic hand comes out of the wall and jacks you off.
No, it pushes you away by the face. That's the Shawinigan Handshake, you fucking asshole.
Yeah,
Stop getting stuff about Canada wrong.
You're really gonna have to rename the boss.
Bud, I'm hacking back a cock here. Going out for a Johnson, are you, bud?
God damn it. No. Right, like, God damn you, Milo. I hate you so much.
Yeah.
Getting a Shawinigan reach around.
Getting jacked off and going, oh, fuck yeah, bud. Yeah.
So,
getting a Shawinigan handshake in the bathroom of the Tim Hortons.
Okay.
Getting a Shawinigan hand job.
Yeah. All right. So, this is something we were talking about, Alice, earlier, right? That this is what we talk about, right? This is mostly a product of like the Obama era foreign policy, right? Where the U.S. decides.
Yeah, we're like, the president is a benevolent philosopher king, but like, I feel like you have to understand this basically as you having been lied to, right? And not just by the media, not just by think tank guys, also by like the president himself at times. So it's like, no, I just like, I'm not doing any kind of like great power shit at all because this switch is off. And of course, secretly, he is doing the great power shit. He's just doing it to people and in places where, you know, you're not going to see it, or like it's not going to matter as much. Like you can do a bit of genocide in Yemen or whatever. You can do drone strikes and
smidge.
Yeah, you can do drone strikes in the Horn of Africa. You can do like special forces raids in Pakistan, whatever. And this like worked for a while, right? In the sense of most people didn't care, because like people are like beaten down, anatomized, and ignorant, and somewhat racist, and all of this. Except now, our boy Putin has kind of thrown a wrench in this, right? By invading Ukraine, and now all of a sudden we have to do shit that's visible in a place that we're already like primed to care about. Like whenever Jens Stoltenberg or whoever else says that like the invasion of Ukraine is the first time war's been back in Europe since 1945, like yes, he's forgetting the Balkan Wars because he's an idiot, but he's also forgetting them because they're kind of like, they were seen at the time and they were treated as at the time as this like peripheral thing that you can kind of like not really worry about that much. Whereas this is like now in the framework of like civilization or whatever.
Well, I think what the way I sort of see this, right, is that for a very long time, we were pursuing this strategy, a strategy of confrontation, right? But massively undermining, and again, like I think that I believe that the strategy of confrontation was the wrong one to pursue, but that also it has been pursued badly.
Because we kept sabotaging ourselves by lying about it. I think that's the thing, right? So we tried to have our cake and eat it, or rather NATO did.
Yeah.
We tried to eat a fish and sit on a dick, as the Russians would say.
Exactly. And the eating a fish was like pursuing this strategy of confrontation with Russia.
People in Miami, they used to eat fishes and sit on homosexual dick.
and the sitting on homosexual dick part was like then immediately be backing down off of things and pretending as if we weren't being imperialist because that was the last thing that would ever come to our mind. And it's like now we've been forced into this position where we have to like snap back to actually, okay, we are going to do realpolitik. The big geopolitics switch is on. It is stupid and naive and facetious of you to complain about us going cap in hand to MBS or to Maduro or to anyone else, because that's how great power works and we're doing great power now. And you're stupid for ever having thought otherwise. And I mean, it doesn't have to be that way, but I do kind of agree. Those people are at least being honest now. And I think what's incumbent on us, and this is kind of tied back to the like this you remembering shit that happened thing, is that now that we're doing this, now that we've all sort of taken off our masks and we're agreeing that like, oh, NATO is like this geopolitical force that does have to act and think like an empire, right? I think it's incumbent on us to go, okay, you can never go back to telling us that the geopolitics switch is off again, because we remember where we were when you just decided to come clean with us.
That's exactly right. It's that because as soon as this is over, they're going to depend on you to forget, right? That whatever over looks like, it's going to be like, well, that's done with now, and we can go back to being a sort of like moral international actor guided by first principles, as opposed to like a great power that is trying to counterbalance another one. Yeah, absolutely. Right? And if you want to even take this one step further, right, what I sort of allude to, quote unquote, when this is all over, right, you can sort of look at this not just in terms of, imperial management. I mean, like, where most sort of, in terms of foreign policy, the main argument sort of since 2016 has been, do we do competent imperial management or incompetent imperial management? And a lot of people went for incompetence.
Yeah. That was the biggest failure of the Obama doctrine. Was like,
well, there are pros on both sides, It
was to be like, oh, I've built this system that requires the gentle, deceitful touch of a benevolent spy master philosopher king, and then the game show host guy from The Apprentice inherits that job.
It's just anytime I think about that, that's just so funny. It's like a sort of much bigger, it's a much sort of bigger, and in terms of like, you know, its ability to inflict pain, like more consequential version of what the UK like Labour Party did in the 2000s, building all of the institutions that require a philosopher king.
Trump actually kind of was a philosopher king. He's like constantly wrapped up in musings. He sort of had the presidency thrust upon him and kind of abhorred the office.
Sure.
He just, all he wanted to do was do his tweets and thoughts. And he did, and he was president out of a sense of duty, you know? I think Trump is the closest to a philosopher king that America has ever had.
It probably ever will have at this point.
Yeah.
And crucially, the kind of most recent president whose like mythology sort of exceeds them in quite like an expansive and global way. I know that like people try to attribute that to Obama, but I think Trump kind of achieved that.
Well, and also like Mithridates, he's eaten so many Big Macs that he's now immune.
So I want to also like talk about not just the transformation of obviously these imperial sort of management institutions into straightforwardly imperial institutions with geopolitical aims that are related to geopolitics, but you can also see it in how the world of investing is grappling with current events. Where I don't know if any of you might have seen this.
It's almost as if those things are like linked to some part of ideology.
Oh, come on. That's crazy.
On the subject of investing, I found it so funny when all of these like massive Western companies were having to queue up to sell billions of dollars worth of Russian assets that they had. But like, we're not talking like retail companies or whatever that had like stores in Russia, but like British oil companies and American oil who'd bought up huge chunks of Russian state oil companies. And it's like, did you honestly think this was a good idea? Like, you could ask the guy in the street, like, do you think buying some of a Russian state oil company is a good investment? Or do you think there is a massive political risk there that is entirely unpredictable? And like the average guy in fucking Dagenham would have been like, no, I wouldn't do that. But BP are like, what can go wrong? We signed a contract.
To be fair, it made all the people who did it rich enough that they could, you know, retire to their various golden boats.
Well, I guess.
Absolutely.
But like,
plus, as we've seen from Iran, contract law wins out in the end. We're going to get our chieftain tanks off of the Russians.
That's right. They're going to have to learn how to make them first.
Yeah.
The big mistake is the assumption that Putin loved treats enough that he wouldn't do anything too out there.
Yeah.
And and the ultimate effect is that when Putin realized that like treats weren't enough to live a fulfilling life, that he wanted to have his Napoleon moment.
It's because fucking Jordan Peterson went to Russia.
This is the thing that struck me about the analysis of this whole thing, right? Which is that there's like this massive lack of complexity in the way people think about it, where like NATO and like the West has pursued like a confrontational strategy with Russia in recent years, but they had the treats guy before, Yeltsin, right? Like that was the time to like not do a kind of like corporatist raid on the Russian economy and kind of like hug Russia tight and bring it into some kind of like modern world consensus where it has like a proper functioning economy and institutions that work and so on. But by the time like Putin was being Putin, there was kind of no non-confrontational strategy available, essentially. They'd already made the mistake. And so then, so when people are like, oh, well, NATO shouldn't have done this, that, it's like, no, like, I saw a good tweet where someone was like, it's a shame that NATO gave Ukraine all those weapons because otherwise Putin would have been forced to embrace the brotherhood of man. And it's like, that is just very true. It's just like, the people assume that Putin is like playing, I think they're like wrongly kind of putting him in the same box in their heads as like the Iranians who are kind of like boxed into a corner and actually have proven they're quite willing to come to the negotiating table at like all sorts of points in the past, and it's mostly been us who have like fucked it up. Whereas like, no, like Putin just has his own game that he's going to play, and you can't really like nice him out of it. But that doesn't also mean that the West doesn't do bad and stupid things. But like two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk about this thing right here with this transformation in ESG. This thing we've talked about before, right?
What ESG is like ethical investing.
Yeah, environmental,
right?
ethical sodium glutamate,
environmental, social governance. You invest not just for a return, but because you want to generate an outcome. You know, it's all very like, you know,
by a huge state.
I invest. Yeah, I invest in the tree planting company because I want trees to be planted.
Exactly.
And I invest in the grass planting company because I want grass to grow. What makes grass grow again?
I don't know.
Yeah, I invest in the
magic.
Boring Company because I want Tesla owners to die.
Yeah. So basically there is no sort of working. There are sort of various working definitions of ESG. It's not a legal term. It's not a regulated term. It's basically a marketing term. But generally speaking, it's for investing that might exclude like fossil fuels or tobacco or weapons manufacturing. Now, given the news, right? Analysts from quoted in the FT said. Defense is likely to be increasingly seen as a necessity that facilitates ESG as an enterprise, as well as maintaining peace, stability, and other social goods. So,
I remember suddenly what makes the grass grow. Because we're doing ethical arms stocks.
That's right.
Hell yes.
Biodegradable AK. That's what I want.
So basically it means like classing defense as an ESG category, because like even by their own standards, right? Even by their own standards of good guys and bad guys, right? Defense company contractors will generally sell to fucking anyone, right? If you're investing in a company that's going to make like end laws for Ukraine, you're investing in a company that's also making bombs for Yemen.
Sure, they'll sell to anyone it's legal to, and also a lot of people it isn't.
Hey, it's defense. It's not offense, guys.
But like all of a sudden, right? There's this rush. There's this serious consideration from like actual people like within like MSCI, some of these sort of like ESG companies that grant like organizations that will say, here's our ESG index, whatever, to bring defense contractors.
Here's your like fund of stocks, to
bring defense contractors in, right? It's being seriously considered at not defense contractors, like BAE Systems. It's being seriously considered at this point, and it's like. It shows
British aerospace ethical systems.
It shows just as like the concepts that these sort of axes of alliances and enmities, whatever, were sort of turns out they weren't straightforwardly moral. This surprises nobody. It also turns out that this thing about ESG investing, like again, it is purely this sort of marketing push, but also it seems to be to me a way for like. People who invest a lot of their money, who read the news, to try to make themselves feel better about the news. It's just a strategy of investing that tries to like, it's news anxiety relief.
Sure. Well, I think you can talk about morals, and now that we are talking about morals, right? I think you can justify the idea of like, in particular, like arming Ukraine, right? I think you can go into that with your eyes open, and you can say this may very well have all kinds of horrible consequences down the line when some fucking like Azov or right sector guy, uses some of our very ethical semtex to blow up something in the West he doesn't like. I think you can still say like this is less worse than us not doing it. I think it's just again it's incumbent on us to be like, okay, but we have to like remember that you said that at the time.
Yeah,
right.
Like, if you say like it is a deal with the devil, right, to arm Combat 14 or whatever. I wonder what that 14 stands for, right? But that's a deal with the devil that
could be anything.
That's a deal with the devil that we are making, and again, we're going to be asked to forget. We're going to be asked to forget that that's what it is that we're doing. We're making we flood Ukraine with all these weapons. Right, we saw like the recent like import of all those weapons into Ukraine, like the 20 million rounds of ammunition, all these pistols, like rifles, all this stuff. Like that doesn't go away after this is done, and a lot of it is going into the
biodegradable ones,
and a lot of it is going into the hands of people like Azov, Adar, C-14. They're the main beneficiaries of what's going on here. Arming a fascist militia that happens to be incorporated into the national defense structure of a country, like as though that won't have short-run effects. When whatever shape the Ukrainian state, because at this point I think it's, I don't like making predictions, but I think at this point you could probably say at some point within the next 4 or 5 years, barring the unspeakable, there will be some kind of Ukrainian state, right?
Sure.
And
the people who are going to have a lot of power in it militarily and politically are going to be fascists whose reason for existing has been conveniently very legitimized by being invaded by Russia.
In a sense, they're kind of legitimizing one another. And it goes back to legitimizing one another in a propaganda sense.
There was never a way in which the Russian invasion of Ukraine would have been justified, but one incidental consequence of it is that, like, the denazification that was kind of a fig leaf for the whole thing would still, I think, have ended up with the leaders of, like, Aidar and Right Sector and Azov in prison, right? So, like, instead of going to prison or getting disappeared, they're going to be like an even more important part of the armed forces, an even more important part of politics. And that's going to get worse in a lot of ways.
And so what a lot of the the world's dopiest investors are trying to do is put a straightforward, well, this is nice, this is not nice label on flooding the country with ethical Semtex.
You get a Rainforest Alliance thing on your Semtex.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
Soil Association.
And I think this goes back to, like,
certified.
And again, the decision, I think it goes back to something like where you say, right, like, the time to pursue a non-confrontational strategy with Russia was in the 1990s, right? To not, like, I don't know, to not humiliate and sort of strip mine the economy of your defeated foe, right? The time, and again, like, I tend to think whatever results come out of a time when you're 100% hegemonic are kind of your fault at base.
Yeah.
Sure.
100%. They had so many options with Russia in the 90s.
But and equally, right, when it came time, to take that mechanism of foreign policy, that sort of delicate sort of mechanism that requires a kind of Obama-style philosopher king, again, fucked up all the time, but sort of thought of himself that way, to administer it, you end up sort of looking at the situation on the ground in Ukraine, being like, well, there's this group of football hooligans, because they were a football firm from Kharkiv called Azov, and we're just going to kind of arm whoever we need to because it's urgent that we take immediate action now. And all of a sudden, right, these guys and groups like them are now completely inseparable from like they're now metastasized the politics there, right? They're not currently dominant in politics, especially not in the way that they've been portrayed, especially not by Russia, but, like, they are there and they're getting more powerful, and all this war does is make them more powerful. And again, at the very beginning in 2014, the decision we went in and we said, they're what we have, and so they're what we're going to work with, and because the big geopolitics switch was on all the time, we sort of made that decision, just like we've made that decision with, like, every other group that we empower, and then say, well, no blowback from this. This is a straightforwardly ethical thing to do. And
yeah, exactly. Like, I think I don't think there was a credible way of turning the Ukrainian armed forces into what they are today without engaging with fascists in some way and supporting fascists in some way. I think that was a situation we were kind of boxed into. I think, as you say, it was a decision we made with our eyes open. And it makes me think a lot about Libya, right? Because I think Libya arose from this same sort of combination of, like, a genuine horror at what was happening, and also a kind of, like, grand geopolitical desire that then resulted in us arming and training some of the worst people in the country, and one of them coming back to the UK and blowing up a fucking concert full of children. So there's all of this shit repeats itself, and the only thing that I would ask really is for, like, enough honesty about it, as we seem to have had this time, right? Because I think people made the calculation that, like, by and large, the British public didn't give a fuck about Libya. I think they were probably right. I don't think that's true about Ukraine, and so it's more difficult to just sweep it under the carpet. But I would rather that if we're gonna do the thing of, like, okay, well, we're gonna have sort of, like, a position on Libya, a position on Ukraine that requires us to work with people who are not nice, and that this may come back to bite us, that we should at least say so at the time.
Yeah. Or plan.
The fact that that was always a possibility. We know now that was always a possibility means that, like, I think retroactively it's possible to get much angrier about all of the shit that we did and then lied about.
And I think further to that, right? Like, it goes to show, I think, how little we actually care about the places that we intervene in, because I'll tell you this for fucking free, right? As soon as whatever this is as soon as there is a, say, Ukrainian state in place, whether that is after sort of some period of an insurgency, whether that is after some kind of cynical compromise or whatever that'll like allows people to rearm and then the problem's not really solved. Whenever there is one of those again, and
Minsk 3.
Yeah, and like, you know, whatever normal politics is resumes, then we're going to just leave this place flooded with weapons. We're going to leave it in the hands of newly empowered fascists. We are going to just leave it to their devices so long as they continue to ally against us. And I mean, the people who I think we are going to abandon are Ukraine's ethnic minorities. We're going to abandon their sexual minorities. We're going to abandon religious minorities. We may abandon quite a few more people because we, with our straightforwardly ethical foreign policy, decided that this was something that we sort of had to do, and that, you know, and that when this is all over, we're going to be done with it. And there is going to be sort of once the crisis is over, once it sort of retakes its form, whatever that form is. I'm not going to say what form that's going to be or when, right? You know, there is no plan for dealing with these people because I think they're people that we prefer dealing with.
Yeah, and God help them if the Ukrainians end up in the fucking EU, because all we'll do is the same thing that we've done in the Balkans, which is build them a nice, like, aluminium and brushed steel and glass building in the center of whatever their capital is that's called, like, the Institute for Price Stability, that, like, whenever anybody suggests doing any kind of social welfare program, an EU bureaucrat just fucking, like, whips the back of their knees with a baton, and then nothing else. Everything outside that is, like, whatever dirt roads they can scrape together.
Yeah.
So great, fantastic. Yeah. This is going to go so fucking well.
Here's what we can offer you. We can offer you Semtex that we've made ourselves feel good about supplying, and that's it. Is the thing. There's nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the complex part of it, right? Is I don't think there's, as we were saying, there's anything wrong with the strategy they're pursuing currently. It's like what they're likely to do afterwards that's the problem. But that still doesn't make, because I think there are a lot of people who are like, oh, well, like, you know, we should just let the Russians roll in there and do what they're going to do, because that's kind of the pacifist strategy, which is effectively advocating for like a kind of like, oh, Vichy France wasn't so bad type situation. Like, think of all the lives that will be saved by having a Vichy France. And I think there is a kind of moral cowardice in that, of being like, okay, so you basically believe that there's nothing worth fighting for, and like people shouldn't be allowed to defend their homes because like someone might get hurt. Is kind of like I think it is a fucking pale streak of piss of a moral argument. But however, if you are going to give them a load of guns and help them defend their homes, which I think is the right thing to do on balance, you do, that does leave you with some obligations afterwards.
I think the thing is, if you do take that line, especially on the left, of being like, no war but class war ever, this is, I would rather like just fucking leave the Ukrainians to it. Good luck, have fun.
Or not even I'm not good getting luck. Involved, it's like the Ukrainians should surrender because less people will die that way. Yeah,
like again, I think I disagree with it as you do. I think you can make that moral argument. I just. As with fucking NATO, I just wish you would actually make it instead of like dancing around it, pretending like you're not, like it's not something you have to address at all.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway.
Like you can't fucking like bullshit me on like everything that's ever happened in the world has been NATO's fault, right? Just fucking say the thing that you believe. It's all I ask on both sides. Say the thing that you think would be a like necessary evil here.
Anyway. I note that we've been going for a while, so I think I'm going to say once again a bit of a somber ending to this one. Remember Deepwell?
Do you want to talk about cum for like 5 minutes?
Remember that video game company from earlier?
Oh yeah, those guys.
They were fun.
Yeah, they're going to help the Ukrainians with their mental health.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
So I think that's going to be it for us for today. But thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, we've got a bonus episode every week. It's $5 a month.
Oh, wait a second. This was the free one.
It was.
It's the free one. It's been the free one.
Yeah, I put you on your fucking back foot, you bitch.
Yeah, we got plugs, baby.
You gave him the Shawinigan Handshake.
Yeah, that's right. He wanked me off. Yeah, we got
listener, do not be deceived. I did not wank Milo off.
Well, then it wasn't a Shawinigan handshake. April 20th in London, there will be a TF live show. Remember the TF live show that was cancelled because Nate and I both had COVID? Well, Trashfuture rides again.
No, it'll be cancelled because we'll all get like Havana syndrome.
Yeah, or like whatever the next wave of COVID is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
March 27th, I'm in Berlin doing my new show. That's soon. That's going to be like, as you listen to this, that's going to be this weekend. So come to that if you're in Berlin. If you're not in Berlin, hey, maybe get a flight. Backyard Comedy Club, London, May the 1st. I'm filming my old show, Pindos, finally, actually this time. Mm-hmm. I've threatened to film it a number of times before. This time I actually have genuine professionals who are not going to fuck it up. Yeah, that is right. Yeah. It's cursed. The show is cursed. But it's happening. Tickets, all these links are on my website, which is in the description. And April 17th, I'm going to the worst city in Britain, Brighton, to do my new show, Voicemail. So do come to that. It's being organized by friend of the show, Tom Allen.
I like that sort of for your worst city in Britain, you've chosen what is generally thought of as a sort of well-to-do pretty town in the south. I think that's going to turn a lot of people onto us.
No, but Milo's hatred of Brighton really comes because it's difficult to drive in.
That's part of it. I won't lie to you.
Well, that's part of it. Okay, yeah. I thought it was
plus
mostly
the general sort of like Lib Demness of
I also associate it with my ex-girlfriend's family, who were really dreadful.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that's part of the Lib Demness. All right.
Yeah.
So, with all that being said, I'm going to thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. Do all that stuff that Milo said. Fly to Berlin if you're not in Berlin. And we will see you on the bonus episode in a few days. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.